So the time is just about upon us for a new chapter to begin. Hey guys, it's me, Mandy. MandieNRG! Yay! Way to go, team! So, I've been talking to you about a new series here on my channel, and here's your little intro episode. I'm doing a series on what is personally something very near and dear to my little heart, Eurobeat. Mandy, what is that is so near and dear to you? It's called Eurobeat, and this is the Super Eurobeat series. Well, this is 4 CDs. This is 90, 100, 200, and 250. This is by no means the whole series. So here's the deal, guys. I know I primarily do makeup, and I do some anime stuff, and I do kind of whatever I feel like doing. I feel like this channel's really lost a lot of thematic qualities. Eurobeat is a music genre that I discovered first when I was about 12 years old with a song called Nights of Fire by an artist called Nico, and you know, I liked the song, wasn't totally suckered into it. When I was 14, I found more of the music, and ever since then, it's my jam. You ever heard the term a soundtrack for your life? That's kind of my relationship with Eurobeat. What I am holding in my hands is Super Eurobeat Volume 250. This was released toward the end of September and is, as of right now, the final CD in the everlasting dance track Super Eurobeat series. There have been 250 volumes made. Pretty crazy cool cats, right? So this video is basically just a crash course introduction to Eurobeat and to the series that you will be seeing unravel on my channel. So grab your popcorn, get ready to drift race. Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Don't forget your para stuff, things, arcade sets, I don't know, in your Gunguro style, because this is gonna be Eurobeat. Gonna get you like a space boy. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm ready, babe. Gonna get you. I'm a space boy. Back into your world, baby. Music for me, on me, baby. Music can set you free. Whoa, whoa. It's a spin away, floating in the waves, and I feel like oh yeah. When we gotta talk, just about to play. I love that song. Whoa, whoa. SCP for you and yes, we're gonna love you, baby. So here's the deal. I've been listening to Eurobeat consistently for 15 years. 15 years. I'm not exaggerating. So to make things super simple about the history or the creation of Eurobeat, the genesis of Eurobeat, if you will. Eurobeat is a music genre that grew out of Italo disco and high energy. But what are these things? Glad you asked, sir, ma'am, whatever you are. Italo disco was a music genre made in Italy in the 80s. You know, you have disco music here in North America. There they had disco, but they also had Italo disco. Over the years, Italo disco evolved into what is now called high energy.
Whoa, whoa, whoa here, guys. Okay, before you get worked up, we're going to take a moment. I know Italo disco technically evolved directly into Eurodance, which was sold to Europe, the European market, and to Eurobeat, which was sold to Japan, the Japanese market. However, high energy was this in-between median that kind of connected both of these genres as they branched out. Don't come for me. This is a generalization.
High energy is something that came about in the late 80s to early 90s. I'm going to give an approximate date range of 1989 to 1992. High energy kind of evolved into two directions. You have your modern day Eurodance, which goes off in one direction, which many people are probably more familiar with through A Dance Dance Revolution, their soundtrack. Yeah, did we all play that on PlayStation 2 back in the day? Because I know I did. And in the arcades. And then it evolved into another direction, being Eurobeat. So you can argue that Eurobeat was the proper evolution of Italo disco to high energy to Eurobeat, because many of the producers and some of the artists, being the singers or vocalists from Italo disco, moved on to Eurobeat. Many random singers and some big names. Eurobeat got its main kicks to fame in the mid-90s. Okay, now you're probably wondering, why have I never heard of Eurobeat? Because some music from Europe, like Nina in the 80s with 99 Luftballons or 99 red balloons, made its way to North America. You have plenty of cross-ocean music contamination going on. Even in the 90s, people knew about Smile DK that were doing DDR. So, what is this Eurobeat? Why have I not heard of it? Well, here's the deal. Italo disco was big in Europe and big in Japan. Take a moment to analyze that, because the markets are very interesting, aren't they? There's a certain amount of intrigue in that I have to acknowledge. So Italo disco, as it emerged, as it evolved, the Genesis of Eurobeat, it went overseas to Japan. It did not face a North American audience. So all of the growth of the music genre was done in the Asian market, specifically in Japan. And it was targeted at Japan. Like the label it was under, the label this CD is under, Avex Trax, is a very powerful music label in Japan. Eurobeat experienced its first major boom with the para para boom of the mid-90s. Mandie, what is para para? It's a music dance where people move their hands. I don't know how to do it, that means nothing what I just did, but I'll have a clip or something for you to see. That is para para, and it had a major boom. If you know anything about Japanese street culture, street fashion, there's a group called Gunguro, and Gunguro fashion, Gunguro girls were majorly into para para back in the 90s. There was also the creation and spread of Dance Dance Revolution, which had a couple of Eurobeat songs eventually on their soundtrack in the late 90s, early 2000s. And have you heard of a little anime called Initial D? Nani? Eurobeat has soundtracks on pretty much every episode of the TV series. When the racers are drifting, racing because they're racers, you hear Eurobeat. There are also arcade games for Initial D with their own individual soundtracks. So you have both the anime and the video game. Cool. In 2000, I'm pretty sure it was 2000 anyway, Avex Trax had the producers in Italy compile a bunch of Disney songs. I said Disney. You're not mishearing this. To have the soundtracks in Tokyo Disneyland, there were 3 individual albums and 1 non-stop album made. A couple of the songs, specifically Mickey Mouse March, done by Domino, one of the artists, can still be heard in Tokyo Disneyland today. In around 2004-2005, Eurobeat experienced its next big boom, which was another para para movement, which is more or less where I really got heavily thrusted in to the genre because of the wider spread availability of it at the time. And it was just a big thing with Initial D 4th stage, I remember. But para para experienced another boom, and I want to say around 2009. And the boom was not as big, so it was around 2009 that Eurobeat started to slowly lose momentum in the Japanese market. Hence how 250 was released in September and is currently the final volume and the discontinuation of the series. In the early 2000s, with the emergence of the internet, there was a meme using the song Running in the 90s by an artist by the name of Max Covery that became a thing on a bunch of websites. Over the last couple of years, there's a song by the name of Deja Vu, sang by Dave Rogers, who's probably the most well-known and infamous Eurobeat artist, that has become totally mainstream courtesy of drifting memes because of initial D. Deja vu, I just been in this place before. So if you don't know what the Deja Vu drifting meme is, you're living under a rock. Just so you know. So a quick recap here, just some other information to go over really quickly. Eurobeat is made and recorded and produced, period, in Italy. There have been multiple Japanese pop or J-pop pop songs made using Eurobeat as the premise, such as the music, the beat, the rhythm, all that jazz, but they change the lyrics and they change just stuff. One example, I'm holding it now because I just recently bought it and I love this song. It is so flippin' good. It's USA by a Japanese group called Da Pump. This is based on a 1992 Eurobeat song by an artist called Joe Yellow called USA. If you listen to these two songs comparatively, they're the same thing, just one's in Japanese and more current, one's in English from a guy with a really heavy Italian accent. Come on, baby, sing it again. I can feel your beat getting away. And the lyrics have nothing to do with one another, other than USA. More fun facts about Eurobeat. So in Eurobeat, you have different singers, obviously, but here's the jazz, if you will. Artists sing under different names. So you can have one vocalist who sings under 4 different aliases. And back in the day, people really didn't know, other than main aliases for people, who kind of crossed into what.
This is the cover art for Maharaja Night High Energy Revolution Volume 9. And yes, that CD compilation is quite the mouthful to say. You'll see that there are 13 tracks. Number 1 is by Mike Scanner. Number 2 is by Mega Energy Man. Number 13 is by Derek Simmons. Well, let me tell you, all 3 of those songs are by the same vocalist, Thomas Marin, who happens to be my favorite singer, period, ever. And he's singing under 3 different names here. This is just an example of the different aliases that you saw in Eurobeat, especially in the 90s. You still see it nowadays.
You're not losing your mind. Trust me. In the beginning with Eurobeat, the 90s specifically, up until about, 2003 I want to say, 2004, somewhere in there, people really didn't know much about the artists behind the music. Because 1, you didn't have YouTube. You need to remember that. No YouTube. 2, information was scat. All you had were CD booklets, like the CD would have, to give you credits for the production, such as the studio, the producer, the writers involved in it. You didn't have much to go off of, guys. I mean, you really didn't.
In the 90s, Eurobeat had a lot of articles published about it in a magazine called Beat Freak. This was sold to the Japanese market.
Now, around the release of Super Eurobeat 150, you started to see music videos. You started to see artist interviews and more involvement from the actual creators of the music. Before that, there wasn't much of it. There were assorted Japanese TV specials that you might see from time to time if you lived in Japan. But again, this is a day and age before YouTube, before the internet was full blown, every household, everyone knew about it. Going back to my Japanese pop notation, there's actually a J-Euro Super Hits 50 on here, so you can see a lot of that was done. Specifically, a couple of groups covered or did Eurobeat music And there's this one really big group called TM Network that back in the 90s did a lot of cross work with Steve Rogers. So this series is going to be talking more about Eurobeat, talking maybe you could say about the hidden gems in the genre, talking about specific producers or specific artists, talking about releases and albums, and more about CDs, because, you know guys, there's just still not a lot out there, and it's kind of disheartening for people like me. You can only imagine it's disheartening for some of the producers and artists too. Just saying. So I'm bringing in a good friend of mine, and him and I are going to be recording this series together. We're both passionate about it. So if you're hearing us talk about songs, you're going to get a totally different listing from me than you are from him. So it just makes sense. We also both really prefer the vocals and the styles of different artists. This all goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Yes! Yes! So keep an eye out for the next video coming up in this series, the first official video with the two of us. And until then, I hope if you love the genre, you'll subscribe. Keep it classy, as I always say, because who knows if I will. Bye-bye, catch you in the next video.